32 kilometres under the sea, 70 kilometres off the northeast coast of Japan. It began at 2:45 in the afternoon on the 11th of March 2011. A 9 magnitude earthquake, the most powerful to have ever hit the country, the 5th most powerful quake in the world since records began. These images surely set to be some of the most memorable, haunting pictures we will ever see. It was to be the cause of a massive tsunami, which triggered massive waves, travelling up to 10 kilometres inland. Everything in the path of those waves was destroyed. Homes, businesses and lives, all lost to the sea as it totally swamped the land. As the country and the entire world tried to understand the magnitude of what had happened, even the country's emperor made an extremely rare speech.
Northern Japan was hit by an unprecedented and massive earthquake of magnitude 9 on Richter's scale. I am touched deeply in my heart as I see the miserable conditions in the affected areas.
In the end, the tsunami led to the deaths of nearly 16,000 people. Another 2,000 people remain missing and over 6,000 more were injured. The ongoing problem for Japan, though, comes from the nuclear accidents resulting from the tsunami. The Fukushima nuclear plant, the emergency power generators flooded and they failed. The reactors began to overheat and in the end, 3 of them went into meltdown.
I must tell you that the situation of the Fukushima nuclear power plant does not allow optimism.
Well, residents within a 20-kilometre radius of the plant were immediately evacuated. The US even advising the people living up to 80 kilometres away from the plant should move out. Over 340,000 people were displaced. Thousands and thousands of lives changed forever. Well, for our series Revisited, France 24 has been back to see what life is like today for those who lost their livelihoods, their homes and even their loved ones. Marie Linton and Guillaume Bression have this report.
Fermented soybeans, grilled salmon and rice. For the Sue family, this is an ordinary breakfast in extraordinary circumstances. The Sues live just 30 kilometres from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant.
You prefer fish, don't you? I know you like fish.
Yoshiharu is a loving grandfather with an interest in history who enjoys the occasional round of golf. He led an unremarkable existence until the March 11th nuclear accident changed his life forever. The 61-year-old now shares a prefabricated temporary housing unit in Minamisoma City, north of the power plant, with his wife and mother. Between them, they've just 50 square metres of space.
Here's the living room. We have our meals and spend most of our time here. When our grandson visits, the 3 of us sleep here. I even fell out of bed once.
The family is among 160,000 people who had to evacuate towns and villages near Fukushima Daiichi, scene of the world's worst nuclear accident since Chernobyl 25 years earlier.
At the beginning, I cried all the time because I didn't know anyone here. But now I feel better because I've made new friends. Every afternoon, we all go for a walk.
The refugees often describe their circumstances with the word shoganai, meaning nothing can be done. But that doesn't stop Yoshiharu's mother from feeling homesick.
My friends and I always say we'd like to die back in Odaka. We don't want to die here. I don't mean that I don't like living here, but still, I'd rather die in my real home.
The family once lived in Odaka, 15 kilometres from the nuclear power plant. Its 13,000 residents had to flee in the aftermath of the disaster. 2 years on, it's still empty. There and in several other locations, residents are permitted to return during the daytime. Yoshiharu and his wife agreed to take us inside the evacuation zone.
There used to be a fence marking the edge of the 20-kilometre cordon around the plant. There was no way we could get past. The police were guarding it 24 hours a day.
Yoshiharu heads to his former home, a spacious rural house that now lies abandoned. Radiation here is still high at 1 microsievert an hour, 4 times the level considered safe for people to return.
The level has to drop to at least 0.23 microsieverts per hour before people can return. Whenever I come back to collect our belongings, there are no voices, no cars, nothing. That's why I never stay here for long. I do what I need to do and go back to the prefab.
Yoshiharu and his wife occasionally return to their old home. Like many other families in this rural region, 3 generations of the Sue family lived under the same roof. But that was before the 14th of March 2011, 3 days after the earthquake and tsunami triggered the nuclear crisis.
I heard a loud noise and then saw a purple cloud in front of a house in the mountains. I took a photo of it. It was an explosion at the nuclear plant. I knew a little about the subject and realized things were getting dangerous, so we left here on the night of the 14th of March.
Yoshiharu quit his job as an engineer at the industrial machinery branch of Hitachi to look after his elderly parents and dedicate himself to farming. But because of radiation, no one will buy his rice and vegetables. His fields have been invaded by wild animals.
We let our pigs go after the accident. Then they mated with wild boar. Those wild animals come back here and eat worms.
There's a cemetery close to the family's old house. In Odaka, a town with a samurai tradition, long-established families show great respect for their ancestors. Abandoning the cemetery was one of the hardest things the family had to do.
Today the tombstones are upright again. They fell over during the earthquake. You can still see the cracks. Japanese people really care about their ancestors, so the first thing we did when the town was partially reopened was tidy up the tombstones.
The nuclear accident was not the only problem for Fukushima's residents. Like the rest of Japan's northeast coast, the area was first struck by a magnitude 9 earthquake, then by a devastating tsunami. High radiation levels mean the post-tsunami cleanup in this area has only just begun. For 2 years, the evacuation zone has remained practically unchanged.
Recovery's been slow, but there's nothing we can do about it.
The government made the whole 20 kilometers area off limits, but in this area of the evacuation zone, the radiation levels are not that high. We could come back and start working again.
Inside the zone, Yoshiharu meets a construction company worker in charge of separating debris. Wooden wreckage is placed on one side, concrete on the other. Later, the materials will be recycled.
We have to sort the debris out first, and that takes time. We can't just pile it up.
Here the problem isn't only the tsunami, but the fact that we're inside the 20-kilometer evacuation zone. People won't be able to return until the area's been decontaminated. That's why everyone wants the radiation cleanup to start as soon as possible.
To decontaminate and rebuild Odaka. That's what Yoshiharu wants as he campaigns to revive his hometown. For now, he's in charge of the prefab housing units. His smile and pleasant manner have made him popular among the 400 residents of this housing complex.
We can always depend on Mr. Sue. I'm grateful for everything he does for us.
Yoshiharu does his best to keep this community of displaced people together. With the help of volunteer and other organisations, he organises activities to help the residents stave off boredom and stay optimistic. Today, they're taking part in a massage workshop in the housing unit's common room.
I've been looking forward to this massage and I'm very happy with the results. I've never done this kind of thing before. I'm very grateful.
Take a look at your face.
But I'm all wrinkly.
No, you're not. The massage has opened your eyes wider.
Yoshiki Konno, a tsunami survivor and nuclear refugee, helps organize these communal activities.
Before, people just said hello to each other, but there was no real communication, because they had come from different places. But thanks to this association, people have got to know each other, and there's a real sense of community here.
Yoshiharu has also created a vegetable patch. In rural areas like this, owning an allotment is more than a mere hobby. It's part of the fabric of the local community.
There are lots of farmers here and they need to touch the soil. Before the earthquake, they tended their fields and grew vegetables. Most of them are elderly, so having plots like these keeps them happy. There's no problem with radiation here. These vegetables were checked last year.
The radiation level here isn't a major concern, at least not for older adults. Even though radiation levels are lower than inside the no-go zone around the nuclear plant, almost all of the younger people have left. To see their children and grandchildren, the Suez have to drive 20 kilometers north. Today, the family are taking advantage of a public holiday to go strawberry picking at a nearby greenhouse.
Come over and try this.
The parents of Naimu, aged 1, and Kokoa, 4, have no intention of returning to their old apartment near the edge of the no-go zone.
My children have already had their thyroids tested, and there were no problems. But it takes about 5 to 10 years for cancers to develop. My kids are still young, so naturally I worry about them. I'm looking for a house at the moment. I'd like to go to Notori and get as far away from the nuclear plant as possible. When the explosions happened there, the US government told its citizens not to go within 80 kilometers.
Separated from their grandchildren, their homes and their fields, the Suez had to change their way of life. Takiko had to quit her job as a nurse, and Yoshiharu found a job at Minamisoma City Hall, helping the 5,600 evacuees still living in temporary housing in the city.
Does it leak when you turn on the tap?
It leaks even when it's turned off. We can hear it dripping all night long.
I don't think there are more problems here than you'd find in an ordinary home, but there are so many temporary housing units that we have a lot of work to do.
On top of his salary, Yoshiharu lives on compensation of €800 a month, paid to each evacuee by Tokyo Electric Power, the company that runs the Fukushima Daiichi plant.
We did nothing wrong, yet we have to live in this tiny place. I can't go home or work in my field because of the accident. And now they tell us that we have to live in this tiny place. They could pay me millions of yen and it still wouldn't take the pain away. It wouldn't make the slightest difference.
The earthquake and tsunami took thousands of lives. The nuclear accident has put the lives of tens of thousands of Fukushima residents on hold. Yoshiharu dreams of returning to the life he led before the disaster. But only the elderly have voiced a desire to go back to areas near the nuclear plant. Younger people can't see a way back. For them and their children, the future lies elsewhere.